I let Marcus's words wash over me in practiced silence, each mocking syllable another brick in the wall I was building between us. "Say water again, babe," he laughed, his voice carrying across his parents' pristine dining room. "Come on, do it for everyone. They love your little pronunciation quirks." Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The crystal chandelier above cast fractured light across the mahogany table where Marcus's family sat. His mother Patricia with her perfectly set blonde hair, his father Richard in his country club blazer, and his sister Bethany smirking behind her wine glass, all of them waiting for the entertainment to begin. "Marcus, I don't think," I started, my Romanian accent thicker when I was nervous, exactly what he wanted. "There it is!" He clapped his hands together like I was a performing seal. "Did you hear that? I don't think. God, it's adorable, like having my own little foreign exchange student." Before we begin this journey together, I want to thank you for being here. If these stories of truth and justice resonate with you, consider subscribing. It's free and helps us grow this community of people who believe in standing up for themselves. Now, let's continue. I forced my lips into what might pass for a smile, my fingers tightening around the stem of my wine glass. If only Marcus knew that this foreign exchange student held the keys to his entire future in her carefully manicured hands. "Marcus, don't be cruel," Patricia said, though her tone suggested she found it anything but cruel. I'm sure Elena is very self-conscious about her differences. Differences. As if my accent was a deformity to be pitied rather than the mark of someone who spoke 4 languages fluently, while Marcus struggled with English, his only tongue. "I'm not being cruel, Mom. Elena knows I'm just teasing. Right, babe?" He reached over and squeezed my hand, his touch possessive. Besides, it's part of her charm, that exotic quality that makes her stand out. Exotic. Like I was some rare bird he'd caged for display. "How did you two meet again?" Richard asked, swirling his bourbon. "Some sort of program?" "Dad, no," Marcus said, laughing. "Elena's not a mail-order bride. She came here on a work visa. She was a translator at some small firm downtown when I met her." Was. Past tense. Because 3 months into our relationship, Marcus had convinced me to quit, insisting his salary as a procurement manager at Hartwell Industries was more than enough to support us both. "Why would you want to work in that dingy office when you could be planning our wedding?" he'd said. "Besides, wouldn't it be nice to focus on getting your English perfect before you're a Hartwell?" I'd been hesitant. My work had been my identity, my independence. But Marcus had been so persuasive, so loving, and I'd been so naive. "A translator," Bethany repeated, making it sound like I'd said garbage collector. "How practical." "It was good money, actually," I said quietly, immediately regretting engaging. "Oh, I'm sure it was good money by Romanian standards," Patricia interjected smoothly. "But here in Greenwich, Connecticut, well, our expectations are quite different." Marcus laughed, not even pretending to defend me. "Mom's right. Elena's still adjusting to how things work in our world. Aren't you, babe?" Our world. As if I hadn't spent the last 3 years in this country, building a life, establishing myself. As if I was still fresh off the plane, wide-eyed and desperate. What they didn't know, what Marcus didn't know, was that I hadn't really quit my job 3 months ago. I'd simply stopped telling him about it. The small translation firm was actually Meridian Language Solutions, a boutique consultancy I'd founded 2 years ago. We specialized in high-stakes legal and immigration translations, with a particular focus on corporate compliance and international labor law. I'd built the business from nothing, operating under my maiden name, Elena Popescu, while Marcus knew me only as Elena Constance, the name I'd adopted when I first came to America to sound more approachable. When Marcus had asked me to quit, I'd done something I'd never done before. I'd lied. I told him I'd given notice. I stopped mentioning work. I made sure to be home when he expected me, scheduling my client meetings and translation work around his assumptions of my unemployed schedule. It hadn't been easy, but watching him now, performing for his family, mocking the very thing that made me successful, my linguistic abilities, I knew I'd made the right choice in keeping that part of my life hidden. "Elena, dear," Patricia said, her voice dripping with false concern, "have you given any thought to speech therapy? I have a wonderful friend who works with actors on their dialects. I'm sure she could help you sound more American. Sound more American. Erase the evidence of where I came from, who I was." "That's actually a great idea, Mom," Marcus said enthusiastically. "Elena, we should look into that, especially if we're going to have children someday. You want them to learn proper English, right?" Proper English. From a man who said supposedly and thought irregardless was a word. "I'll think about it," I murmured, playing the part of the compliant fiancé. "You know what's funny?" Bethany leaned forward, her eyes glittering with malice. "I was looking at your engagement ring the other day, Elena. It's beautiful. That must be, what, 2 carats?" 2.5, Marcus said proudly. "Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, like this video, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story." And I was thinking, that's probably worth more than Elena made in an entire year at her little translation job, right? The table went silent for a moment, everyone waiting for my reaction. I suppose so," I said softly, lowering my eyes. Inside, I was calculating. The ring Marcus had given me cost approximately $18,000 based on my research. Last year, Meridian Language Solutions had grossed $340,000, with my personal take-home being roughly $195,000 after business expenses and taxes. This year, we were on track to break $500,000, but they didn't need to know that. "Elena's very grateful," Marcus said, squeezing my hand again. "Aren't you, babe? This is a life you never could have had back in Romania." There it was. The underlying message that had been building all evening, maybe building for months. I should be grateful. Grateful for him, for this family, for the opportunity to erase myself and become whatever they wanted me to be. "Yes," I said, my accent deliberately thicker. "Very grateful." Marcus beamed, completely missing the edge in my voice. "Well," Richard said, standing up, "shall we move to the sitting room? I have that excellent port I've been saving." As everyone rose from the table, Marcus's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and frowned. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Yeah, just work stuff. Hartwell's got some new compliance thing they're implementing. Bunch of paperwork about international hiring practices." He shook his head. "Annoying timing with the wedding coming up." My heart rate increased slightly, though I kept my expression neutral. "What kind of compliance?" "Oh, the usual corporate nonsense. Apparently there's been some crackdown on companies employing foreign workers who don't have proper documentation. They're auditing everyone's files, making sure all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed." "That sounds serious," I said carefully. "Nah, it's just paranoid HR stuff. Everyone's so scared of getting fined these days." He pocketed his phone. "Come on, let's get that port. Maybe after a few drinks, you can do your impression of your mom's accent for everyone. That one kills me." He walked ahead, laughing, not noticing that I'd stopped walking. My mother's accent. The accent she'd carried with pride through poverty and hardship, through emigration and adaptation, through raising me alone after my father died. The accent that reminded me where I came from, what I'd survived, who I was. And Marcus wanted me to mock it for entertainment. Something crystallized in that moment, something that had been forming for months, but that I'd been too in love or too afraid to acknowledge. This wasn't going to work. This marriage, this life, this version of Elena who made herself smaller and quieter and more American to please a man who would never see her as an equal. But I wasn't going to just walk away, because here's what Marcus didn't know. Hartwell Industries wasn't just implementing some new compliance thing. They were undergoing a full immigration audit by U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, triggered by an EKE, anonymous tip about systematic violations in their procurement department. And I should know. Meridian Language Solutions had been hired to translate and verify all of their I-9 forms, visa documentation, and international contractor agreements. I'd been working on the Hartwell account for 6 weeks, operating through my business partner Chen to avoid any potential conflict of interest. The anonymous tip had come from an employee who'd noticed irregularities in how the procurement department, Marcus's department, handled international contractors. Specifically, there were dozens of instances where contractors had been working on expired visas, sometimes for months, because the department had failed to verify their documentation properly. The person responsible for that verification? The procurement manager? Marcus. I'd known about the audit for 3 weeks. I'd known Marcus's name was all over the files for another 2 weeks after that. And I'd spent the last 7 days carefully reviewing every document, every signature, every instance where Marcus had cut corners or ignored protocol or simply not done his job. The evidence was damning. Not criminal, probably, but definitely cause for termination. And in Marcus's position, being fired for immigration compliance violations would make him virtually unhireable in any corporate setting. But I hadn't decided what to do with that information yet. Part of me had hoped. Pathetically, I now realized that Marcus would somehow prove himself worthy of my protection, that he would stand up for me, defend me, show even a glimmer of the respect I deserved. Instead, he wanted me to mock my mother's accent. "Elena!" Marcus called from the sitting room. "You coming?" I took a breath and walked forward, my mind already working through the steps I would need to take. "Sorry," I said, entering the room where Marcus's family had arranged themselves like a portrait of Connecticut privilege. "I was just thinking." "Thinking in Romanian or English?" Bethany asked, and everyone laughed. I smiled, playing my part one more time. "English is getting better," I said, deliberately mangling the grammar. "Marcus is very patient teacher." More laughter. Marcus pulled me down onto the couch beside him, his arm around my shoulders like a trophy. "She's a work in progress," he said, "but she's my work in progress." Patricia raised her glass. "To Marcus and Elena, may your marriage be everything you deserve." Everything we deserved. The irony was almost too perfect. I raised my glass and smiled, already planning. The drive back to our apartment, my apartment actually, though Marcus had moved in and taken over as if it had always been his, was quiet. Marcus scrolled through his phone, occasionally chuckling at something, while I stared out the window at the darkened Connecticut suburbs rolling past. "You were a good sport tonight," he said eventually, not looking up from his screen. "I know my family can be a lot." "They're fine," I said. Bethany was being a bit of a bitch about the ring thing, though. Sorry about that. She's just jealous." I didn't respond. "Hey." He reached over and squeezed my knee. "You know I love you, right? Accent and all?" Accent and all. Like it was a defect he was graciously overlooking. "I know," I said. "Good." He went back to his phone. "Oh, by the way, I'm going to need you to help me with something tomorrow." "What's that?" "This compliance thing at work. They need me to provide documentation about my residency history, where I've lived, when, all that boring stuff. You're better at organizing that kind of thing than I am." Of course I was. Because while Marcus had been coasting through life on charm and connections, I'd been building systems, creating structures, learning to navigate bureaucracies in a language that wasn't my first. "I can help," I said. "Perfect. I need to submit everything by Friday." They're being super anal about the timeline. Friday. 3 days from now. 3 days before USCIS was scheduled to conduct their on-site audit at Hartwell Industries, the audit that would uncover months of violations in the procurement department. "Is this about the foreign contractors?" I asked casually. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. "Yeah, partially. They're just covering their bases, making sure everyone in my department followed protocol. Which we did, obviously. It's just paperwork." "Obviously." Except I'd seen the files. I knew exactly how many corners Marcus had cut, how many times he'd signed off on contractors without proper verification, how many instances where he'd let documentation slide because it was easier than doing the work properly. "I'm sure it will be fine," I said. "Of course it will be. I'm not worried." But his jaw was tight, and he was scrolling through his phone more aggressively than before. We pulled into the parking garage of my building, the building I'd purchased with my business profits, the building where Marcus paid no rent because I'd told him I was subletting, that my landlord was giving me a deal. In the elevator up to the 10th floor, Marcus pulled me close and kissed me, his hands possessive on my waist. "Love you," he said. "Love you too," I replied automatically, the words tasting like ash. Inside the apartment, Marcus headed straight for the bedroom, already loosening his tie. "I'm beat. Coming to bed. In a minute. I want some tea first." "Your weird Romanian tea?" He grinned. "Or as you would say, tia." I forced a laugh. "Yes, my weird Romanian tea." He disappeared into the bedroom, and I stood alone in my kitchen that he'd slowly colonized with his protein powders and his expensive coffee machine and his casual assumption that everything I had was now his. I didn't make tea. Instead, I walked to my study, the one room in the apartment Marcus rarely entered because I'd told him it was where I did freelance work to keep myself busy. He'd never asked what kind of freelance work. He'd never been interested enough to ask. I locked the door and booted up my computer. 3 monitors flickered to life, displaying the carefully organized files of Meridian Language Solutions. In the center screen, I pulled up the Hartwell Industries folder. Everything was there. Every violation, every skipped verification, every contractor who'd worked past their visa expiration, and Marcus's signature on every single approval form. My business partner Chen had already flagged it for our client, USCIS. It was our obligation as translators and compliance consultants to report discrepancies. The audit was happening regardless of what I did or didn't do. But there was one document that could potentially shield Marcus from the worst of it. A memo I'd found buried in the files, dated 8 months ago, where the previous procurement manager had warned Marcus about the documentation issues and advised him to conduct a full review. Marcus had acknowledged the memo but apparently never followed up. If that memo disappeared from the files, Marcus could claim ignorance. He could say he'd inherited a mess and didn't know about the issues. He might survive the audit with a reprimand instead of termination. If the memo stayed in the files, Marcus was finished at Hartwell. And with immigration compliance violations on his record, he'd be finished almost everywhere else too. I stared at the document, my cursor hovering over the file. "Elena?" Marcus's voice came from the bedroom. "You coming to bed or what?" "Just finishing up," I called back. "Don't stay up too late doing your little hobby work," he said, his tone indulgent, like I was a child playing at being productive. My little hobby work, the business that could destroy his career with a single document. I thought about his face tonight at dinner, laughing as his family mocked me. I thought about every time he'd introduced me as his exotic girlfriend, every time he'd corrected my pronunciation in public, every time he'd made me feel like I should be grateful he'd chosen me despite my deficiencies. I thought about my mother, who'd worked 3 jobs to send me to university, who'd taught me that my accent was a badge of honor, proof that I was strong enough to build a life in a new language. And I thought about the woman I'd become since meeting Marcus, smaller, quieter, constantly apologizing for taking up space. That woman was done. I closed the file without deleting it, but I wasn't ready to turn it in yet either, because I'd learned something important in my years building a business in a foreign country. Timing is everything, and the right moment to act isn't always the obvious one. Instead, I opened a new document and began to write. A detailed timeline of every incident over the past year where Marcus had undermined me, mocked me, or made me feel less than. Not for any legal purpose. I wasn't looking to build a case. But because I needed to see it all laid out, to remind myself that this wasn't one bad evening. This was a pattern. By the time I finished, it was after midnight. My tea had gone cold, forgotten on the desk. "Elena!" Marcus's voice was irritated now. "Seriously, come to bed." I saved the document, encrypted it, and shut down my computer. In the bedroom, Marcus was already half asleep, sprawled across 3/4 of the bed in his usual territorial fashion. I changed into pajamas and slipped under the covers, careful not to disturb him. "Finally," he mumbled. "What were you doing in there for so long?" "Just thinking," I said. "You think too much." He pulled me close, his arm heavy across my waist. "That's your problem, babe. You're always in your head about stuff. You need to learn to just relax. Be more American. Be more American. Erase more of myself. Disappear a little more each day until there was nothing left of Elena Popescu, only the quiet, grateful girl Marcus wanted me to be." I lay awake long after his breathing evened out into sleep, staring at the ceiling of my apartment. The apartment he thought was ours, bought with money from the business he didn't know I owned, in the country where he thought I was lucky to have him. And I made my decision. Not revenge. I'd never been interested in revenge. But justice? Truth? Making sure that actions had consequences? Yes, I could do that. Tomorrow, I would start putting the pieces in place. Not to hurt Marcus, but to free myself. To reclaim the woman I'd been before I'd let love make me small. The woman who'd built a business from nothing. The woman who spoke 4 languages. The woman who'd survived more in 30 years than Marcus could imagine. That woman was still here, underneath the performance, and she was done being quiet. I fell asleep planning, my mind already 3 steps ahead, already seeing the path forward. Marcus slept soundly beside me, confident in his world, his life, his control. He had no idea that the ground beneath him was already shifting, and in 3 days, When his phone rang with a call from USCIS, when his world started to crack apart, I would be standing right beside him, watching, waiting, ready. But first, I had work to do. The next morning, I woke before Marcus, as I always did. While he slept, I made coffee in my kitchen, the kitchen I owned, and reviewed my plan one more time. I wasn't going to hide the memo. That would be dishonest, and despite everything, I'd built my business on integrity. But I was going to make sure I was present for every moment of what came next. Marcus would face the consequences of his actions, but I would be there, watching him finally see me clearly. "Morning, babe." Marcus emerged from the bedroom, hair messy, stretching. "You're up early." "Couldn't sleep," I said, handing him a cup of coffee. "Still thinking too much." He kissed my forehead absently. "So, can you help me gather those documents today? For the compliance thing?" "Of course. What do you need?" For the next hour, I watched Marcus fumble through his disorganized files, growing increasingly frustrated. He'd never been good with paperwork, never seen the point in being meticulous. That had always been my job, fixing his messes, organizing his chaos. "This is ridiculous," he muttered. "Why do they need all this anyway?" "Because it's important," I said quietly. "Immigration compliance is serious. It's just bureaucratic nonsense. Nobody actually cares about this stuff as long as the work gets done." There it was. The casual dismissal of rules, of systems, of the things that kept people like me, immigrants, safe and legal in this country. "I care," I said. He looked up surprised. "What?" I said I care about immigration law, about documentation, about doing things properly. Marcus laughed. "Well, yeah, of course you do. You had to jump through all those hoops to get here. But for American companies hiring people, it's different." "It's not different," I said, my accent sharp. "The rules exist for reason." Okay, don't get all worked up." He waved his hand dismissively. "Can you just help me organize this or not?" I helped him. I organized every document, made copies, created a timeline, and I said nothing about what I knew was coming. Wednesday arrived. Marcus went to work nervous but confident, armed with the documentation I'd helped him prepare. I went to my office, the office Marcus didn't know existed, and prepared for the audit. Chen was already there, reviewing final translations. "The USCIS team arrives tomorrow," she said. "Everything's ready on our end." "And the procurement department files?" "Complete, including the memo from 8 months ago." She paused. "Elena, are you sure about this? That's your fiancé's signature on dozens of violations." "I'm sure. This will destroy his career." "No," I said carefully. "His choices will destroy his career. We're just translating the evidence." Chen studied me for a long moment. "What happened?" I thought about explaining it, the mockery, the disrespect, the way Marcus and his family had spent an entire evening treating me like an amusing pet. But it was bigger than one dinner. "He wanted me to be smaller," I said finally. "And I'm done being small." Chen nodded. "Then let's make sure the translations are perfect." We worked through the day, double-checking every document. By evening, everything was ready for tomorrow's audit. My phone buzzed. "Marcus, hey babe, working late tonight. This compliance stuff is taking forever. Don't wait up." I texted back, "Okay, good luck with everything." His response came immediately. "Don't need luck. It's all just paperwork. Love you." I didn't respond. Thursday morning, I dressed carefully in a navy suit, professional, authoritative. The kind of outfit I wore for high-stakes client meetings, not the casual clothes Marcus was used to seeing me in. "You look nice," he said, surprised. "Got an interview or something?" Something like that, I said. Well, good luck. Maybe today's the day someone finally hires you. He grinned, completely sincere. It would be nice for you to contribute a little, even if it's just part-time. I looked at him, really looked at him, and wondered how I'd ever convinced myself I loved this man. Yes, I said, it would be nice to contribute. He left for work whistling, confident in his world. I left 30 minutes later, driving to Hartwell Industries. The USCIS audit team arrived at 9 a.m. sharp. I was already in the conference room with Chen, setting up our materials as consultants for the agency. We'd been contracted to provide translation services and compliance verification, standard practice for audits involving international documentation. At 9:45, Marcus's department was called in. I watched through the conference room's glass wall as he walked past, deep in conversation with his supervisor. He didn't see me. Why would he look for me here? The audit proceeded methodically. Files were reviewed, signatures were verified, questions were asked. At 11:30, the lead auditor, a stern woman named Jennifer Morrison, called for a break. "We found significant irregularities in the procurement department," she told her team. "Dozens of instances where contractors worked beyond visa expiration dates, multiple failures to verify documentation, and this memo—" She held up the document that would end Marcus's career, showing the department head was explicitly warned 8 months ago and failed to take corrective action. "Who's the department head?" one of the junior auditors asked. "Marcus Hartwell," Morrison said. Chen glanced at me. I kept my expression neutral. "We'll need to interview him directly after lunch," Morrison continued. "This level of negligence could result in substantial fines for the company, possibly criminal charges if we find evidence of knowing violations." My phone buzzed. "Marcus. Babe, this audit is crazy. They're asking about stuff from months ago. I'm sure it's fine, but it's stressful. Can you bring me lunch? Would love to see you." I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, "I'm actually busy today. Sorry." 3 dots appeared immediately. "Busy with what? I thought you were free." "I'll explain later," I sent back. The dots appeared and disappeared several times, then, "Whatever. I'll grab something from the cafeteria." At 1 p.m., the audit team reconvened. Morrison requested Marcus's presence in the conference room. I was seated at the table, my laptop open, when he walked in. He stopped dead when he saw me. "Elena, why are you here?" "Ms. Popescu is one of our contracted translators," Morrison said. "Please, take a seat, Mr. Hartwell." "Popescu?" Marcus looked confused. "Elena, what is she talking about?" "My name," I said calmly, my accent clear and unashamed, "is Elena Popescu. I use my maiden name professionally." "Professionally? You don't have a—" He stopped, his brain finally catching up. "Wait, you're the translator?" "I'm one of the owners of Meridian Language Solutions," I said. "We've been contracted by USCIS to verify and translate all immigration documentation for this audit." Marcus's face went through several colors. You own a company? Since when?" "Since before I met you," I said. "I never quit my job, Marcus. I just stopped telling you about it." "But you said—" He was sputtering now, his confidence evaporating. "You let me think you were unemployed, that I was supporting you." "You assumed I was unemployed. I never confirmed it." "Mr. Hartwell," Morrison interrupted, her voice sharp. "We need to discuss these documentation irregularities in your department." "I don't understand," Marcus said, still staring at me. "Elena, what's going on?" "What's going on," I said, "is that for the past 6 weeks, I've been translating and verifying every I-9 form, every visa document, every contractor agreement from your department. And I've found systematic violations spanning 8 months. I opened my laptop and turned it toward him, displaying page after page of documents bearing his signature. These contractors, I said, pointing to the screen, worked an average of 43 days beyond their visa expiration dates, some as long as 90 days. Every single approval form is signed by you. Marcus's face had gone pale. There were so many files, I couldn't check everything. This memo, Morrison said, sliding a document across the table. From your predecessor specifically warned you about documentation issues and recommended a comprehensive review. You acknowledged receiving it. Did you conduct that review? I meant to, but we were so busy. Yes or no, Mr. Hartwell? No, he admitted. But it wasn't intentional. It was just an oversight. An oversight that lasted 8 months, I said quietly. An oversight that put dozens of people's immigration status at risk. People like me, Marcus. People who depend on proper documentation to stay in this country legally. He looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw the moment it all clicked. The competent woman who'd organized his files, who understood bureaucracy, who spoke multiple languages, that woman had never been the helpless immigrant he'd imagined. She'd been successful all along, and he'd been too arrogant to see it. Elena, he said, his voice shaking, you're doing this because of what? Dinner on Tuesday? Because my family made some jokes? I'm doing this, I said, because it's my job. Because when I was hired to verify documentation, I took that responsibility seriously. The way you should have taken yours seriously. But you're my fiancé. You're supposed to be on my side. I'm on the side of doing things correctly, of respecting the rules that keep people safe. I leaned forward. Every time you didn't verify a visa, every time you signed off on paperwork without checking, you put someone's life in chaos. Someone who might have been working here, building a life, trusting that their employer was keeping them legal. This is insane, he said, turning to Morrison. This is a conflict of interest. She can't be on this audit when she's personally involved with me. Ms. Popescu disclosed your relationship when she was assigned to this project, Morrison said. All her work has been supervised and double-checked by her partner. We're confident in the integrity of her translations. I disclosed it, I added, because unlike you, I understand that integrity matters more than convenience. Marcus stood up abruptly. I need to call my lawyer. That's your right, Morrison said. But based on what we've found, I'm required to inform you that Hartwell Industries will likely terminate your employment. USCIS will be levying significant fines against the company and will be investigating whether criminal charges are warranted. Marcus's phone started ringing. He looked at the screen and his face went even paler. It's my boss. You should probably answer that, I said. He stumbled out of the conference room, phone pressed to his ear. Morrison looked at me. Are you all right, Ms. Popescu? I'm fine, I said. Just doing my job. I stayed at Hartwell Industries until the audit concluded at 5 p.m. The findings were damning. Marcus was fired before the day ended. The company faced over $400,000 in fines. Several other employees in his department were suspended pending investigation. When I finally left the building, Marcus was waiting by my car. How long have you known? He asked. About the audit. 3 weeks. And you said nothing. You helped me prepare documents knowing I was about to be destroyed. I helped you prepare the truth, I said. The documents you submitted were accurate. They just weren't enough to erase 8 months of negligence. You could have warned me. You could have told me what you found. And you could have done your job properly in the first place. He laughed bitterly. This is about the dinner, isn't it? About my family making jokes. You're that petty? This has nothing to do with being petty, Marcus. This has to do with respect. Respect for the law, respect for the people whose lives depend on proper documentation, and respect for me. I respected you. You mocked my accent in front of your family. You called me your work in progress. You introduced me as your exotic pet. My voice was steady, calm. You convinced me to quit my job, except I didn't, because somewhere inside I knew I couldn't trust you with my independence, and I was right. So this is revenge. No, I said. This is consequences. You broke the rules, Marcus. You cut corners. You didn't take your responsibilities seriously because you thought they didn't matter, and now you're facing the results of those choices. I'll lose everything. No, you'll lose your job and your reputation in corporate compliance. You still have your family's money, their connections. You'll be fine. I unlocked my car. Meanwhile, the contractors you failed to properly document, some of them might face deportation, might lose years of building their lives here, but you never thought about them, did you? And what about us? He asked. What about our engagement? I pulled the ring off my finger, the 2.5-carat symbol of his generosity that I could have bought 3 times over with my own money, and held it out to him. There is no us, I said. There never really was. There was the me you wanted me to be, quiet, grateful, small. And there was who I actually am. You never wanted to meet the real me. He didn't take the ring. Elena, please. I love you. You love the idea of me, the immigrant girl who should be grateful you chose her. But I'm not that girl, Marcus. I never was. I placed the ring on the hood of his car that I now realized probably cost less than my annual business profits, and got into mine. You destroyed my life, he said. No, I said, starting the engine. I just stopped protecting you from the consequences of your own actions. There's a difference. I drove away without looking back. That evening, I sat in my apartment that would never again house Marcus's assumption of ownership, and called my mother in Romania. Elena, she answered, her accent warm and familiar. How are you, Draga Mea? I'm good, Mama. Better than I've been in a long time. You sound different. Stronger. I feel stronger. I switched to Romanian, letting my native language flow freely. I ended things with Marcus. The American boy? What happened? I told her everything, the dinner, the mockery, the audit, the confrontation. When I finished, there was a long silence. Are you crying, Elena? No, I said, surprised to realize it was true. I thought I would be, but I just feel free. Good, my mother said fiercely. You should never make yourself small for a man. I didn't raise you to apologize for who you are. I know, Mama. I forgot for a while, but I remember now. Your accent, she said. He made fun of your accent? Yes. Fool, she said. Your accent means you're brave enough to speak in a language that isn't yours. It means you're smart enough to learn new things. It means you're strong enough to build a life in a foreign place. Her voice was fierce with pride. Your accent is beautiful, Elena. Don't let anyone tell you different. Tears came then, but they were good tears. Healing tears. I won't, Mama. I promise. We talked for another hour, making plans for me to visit Romania for Christmas. When we hung up, I felt lighter than I had in months. 3 weeks later, I was in my office when Chen knocked on the door. You have a visitor, she said. Who? Patricia Hartwell, Marcus's mother. I was surprised, but I gestured for Chen to show her in. Patricia entered my office, looking around with barely concealed shock at the sleek, modern space with its walls of bookshelves in different languages, and my framed certifications from 3 countries. "This is yours?" she asked. "Yes, please sit." She sat, but she looked uncomfortable. "I don't know why I came actually. To yell at you, maybe. To understand." "Understand what?" "How you could destroy my son's career. How you could be so vindictive." "I didn't destroy anything, Mrs. Hartwell. Marcus's failure to do his job properly destroyed his career. I simply translated the evidence." "You could have warned him. You could have helped him fix it before the audit." "And break the law? Compromise my professional integrity? Why would I do that?" Patricia stared at me. "Because you loved him. Because you were going to be family." "He mocked my accent in front of you," I said quietly. "All of you laughed. You suggested I get speech therapy to sound more American. You treated me like a charity case your son was generous enough to take in." She had the grace to look uncomfortable. We were just what? Just having fun? Just making jokes?" I leaned forward. "Mrs. Hartwell, I speak 4 languages fluently. I built this business from nothing. I employ 12 people. Last year, my company grossed over $300,000, and your son convinced me to pretend to be unemployed because he couldn't handle being with a woman more successful than him." Patricia's eyes widened. 300,000. This year will break 500,000. I smiled. "That ring Marcus gave me, I could have bought 5 of them without affecting my budget. But he needed to feel like he was rescuing me, supporting me, raising me up. And I was foolish enough to let him. But you seemed so small, quiet, grateful." I nodded. "Yes, I made myself that way because I loved him. Or thought I did. But love shouldn't require you to diminish yourself." Patricia was quiet for a long moment. "I didn't know. You didn't ask. None of you did. You saw my accent and assumed incompetence. You saw where I came from and assumed poverty. You saw a foreign woman and assumed she needed saving. What will Marcus do now? I don't know, Mrs. Hartwell. That's not my concern anymore." I stood, signaling the meeting was over. "But if you're asking if I feel guilty, I don't. I did my job with integrity. I wish Marcus had done the same." She stood, her face a mixture of emotions I couldn't quite read. At the door, she paused. "That dinner," she said, when we were laughing, "I see now how it must have felt." "Do you?" "My parents came from Italy," she said quietly. "My mother had an accent her whole life. When I was young, I was embarrassed by it. I wanted her to sound American." She looked at me. "I spent years trying to erase that part of my history, and then I married into Connecticut society and forgot where I came from entirely." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I see it now. How we treated you. How I let Marcus treat you." She straightened her shoulders. "I'm not apologizing for my son's career consequences. Those he earned. But I am sorry for how we made you feel." I hadn't expected that. "Thank you." She left, and I stood at my window watching her car pull away from my building. Chen appeared in the doorway. "That looked intense." "It was unexpected," I admitted. "Do you think Marcus will be okay?" I thought about it. "Eventually. His family has money and connections. He'll land somewhere, probably at one of his father's country club friends' companies. He'll tell the story of the vindictive foreign ex-fiancé who ruined him, and he'll never really understand what he did wrong." "Does that bother you?" "No," I said, and meant it. "His growth isn't my responsibility. My own is." 6 months later, Meridian Language Solutions opened a second office in New York City. We'd landed 3 new corporate clients and expanded our team to 18 people. I'd been featured in an entrepreneurship magazine, Romanian Immigrant Builds Translation Empire, and the interview had led to speaking invitations at 2 business conferences. I was preparing for one of those conferences when my assistant buzzed me. "Elena, there's a Marcus Hartwell calling. He says it's important." I hadn't heard from Marcus since our confrontation in the parking lot. "Put him through." "Elena." His voice was different, smaller, less confident. "I need help." "With what?" "I'm trying to get hired at a consulting firm. They're doing a background check and the Hartwell thing keeps coming up. I was wondering if you could, I don't know, vouch for me? Say it was a misunderstanding?" I almost laughed. "You want me to lie about what happened?" "Not lie, just soften it. Say it was an administrative error, not negligence." "It was negligence, Marcus. Documented, verified negligence." "Elena, please, I can't get hired anywhere decent. Every time I'm about to get an offer, they do the background check and find the USCIS violations. My career is destroyed." "No, your career in corporate compliance is destroyed because you proved you can't be trusted with compliance. That's not unfair, Marcus. That's appropriate." "So you won't help me?" "I won't lie for you, but I can give you some advice." "What?" "Stop looking for jobs in areas that require trust in regulatory compliance. Find something different. Use your family connections to pivot to a new field. And maybe, just maybe, learn from what happened instead of looking for someone to rescue you from the consequences." There was a long silence. "I don't know why I expected anything different from you." "Because you still don't see me clearly," I said. "You still think I'm the woman who should be grateful you chose her. But Marcus, I was never that woman. I just pretended to be her for a while." "I did love you, you know." "Maybe you loved the version of me you created, but you never knew the real me well enough to love her." He hung up without saying goodbye. Chen poked her head in. "Everything okay?" "Yes," I said, and realized I meant it completely. Everything is exactly as it should be. That weekend, I flew to Romania to visit my mother. When I landed in Bucharest, I breathed in the familiar air and felt something settle in my chest, a sense of homecoming I hadn't allowed myself to feel in years. My mother met me at the airport, her face lighting up when she saw me. "Elena!" She pulled me into a hug, speaking rapid Romanian. "You look wonderful, so strong, so yourself." "I feel like myself again, Mama." We drove through the city, and I found myself noticing things I'd trained myself to forget. The beauty of the language, the warmth of the culture, the parts of me that I'd been trying to sand away to fit into Marcus's American dream. "Tell me about your business," my mother said. "Everything." I told her about the expansion, the new clients, the speaking engagements. I told her about the women I'd hired, 3 of them immigrants like me, and how good it felt to give them opportunities. "You're doing what you were meant to do," she said proudly. "Building something, helping people, being strong." "I forgot for a while," I admitted. "I let Marcus make me think I should be smaller." "But you remembered. That's what matters." She squeezed my hand. "Your father would be so proud. You're everything he dreamed you could be." That night, jet-lagged and emotional, I sat on my mother's balcony and called Chen. "How's Romania?" she asked. "Perfect. Exactly what I needed." I paused. "Chen, I've been thinking. We should expand our services to include consulting for immigrant entrepreneurs, help them navigate business regulations, translation services, legal documentation." "That's a great idea. Why now?" "Because I spent a year hiding my success from someone who should have celebrated it." And I know I'm not the only immigrant woman who's made herself small to fit someone else's expectations. Maybe we can help others avoid that mistake." "I love it," Chen said. "Let's do it." We talked for another hour, planning, dreaming, building. When I finally went to bed, I slept better than I had in years. 1 year after the audit, I was in my New York office when I received an unexpected package. Inside was a book, a newly published guide to corporate compliance in international hiring, and a note. "Ms. Popescu, I wanted to thank you for your work on the Hartwell Industries audit. The violations you uncovered led to systematic reviews across 12 other companies in the tri-state area, resulting in better protections for over 300 immigrant workers. Your thorough documentation and translation work was instrumental in those reforms. I thought you might be interested in this book." Chapter 7 discusses the Hartwell case as an example of why proper verification matters. Your name is mentioned as the compliance consultant whose detailed work helped prevent further violations. Thank you for your integrity and professionalism. Best regards, Jennifer Morrison, USCIS. I opened the book to Chapter 7 and found the case study. There, in black and white, was the truth of what had happened. Not a bitter ex-fiancé's revenge, but a professional consultant doing her job with integrity, uncovering violations that had put real people at risk. The book didn't mention Marcus by name, but it detailed the consequences of his negligence. 3 contractors who'd been at risk of deportation, 2 who'd lost job opportunities because of documentation issues, 1 who'd been unable to visit his dying father because his visa status was in question. Real consequences. Real people. Real harm caused by someone's decision that the rules didn't matter. I felt vindicated in a way I hadn't even known I needed. 2 years after leaving Marcus, I stood on a stage at a business conference in Boston, looking out at 200 faces, entrepreneurs, consultants, business owners. "My name is Elena Popescu," I began, letting my accent ring clear and proud, "and I want to talk to you about the power of refusing to be small." I told them about building Meridian Language Solutions, about the challenges of being a foreign entrepreneur in America, about the importance of integrity in business. I didn't mention Marcus by name. I didn't need to. The story wasn't about him anymore. It was about me, about finding my way back to myself, about refusing to apologize for my success, about understanding that my accent wasn't a flaw to be fixed, but a testament to my courage. When I finished, the applause was thunderous. Afterward, a young woman approached me, early 20s, nervous, with an accent I recognized as Polish. "Ms. Popescu," she said, "thank you for that talk. I've been hiding my accent in job interviews, trying to sound more American, but listening to you, I think maybe I've been doing it wrong." "You have been," I said gently. "Your accent is proof of your bravery. Don't hide it. Use it to show employers that you're smart enough to function in a language that isn't your first. That's a strength, not a weakness." Her eyes filled with tears. "No one ever said it that way before." "Well, I'm saying it now. Be proud of who you are, all of who you are." She left smiling, and I felt a deep sense of rightness. This was what I was meant to do, not just build a business, but help others build themselves up. 3 years after the audit, I received a final piece of correspondence related to Marcus. His sister Bethany requested a meeting. We met at a coffee shop in Manhattan. She looked different than I remembered. Less polished, more genuine. "I'm not here to make excuses for Marcus," she started, "or for my family. I'm here because I'm starting my own business, and I realized I don't know anything about actually building something from scratch." Everything I've had has been given to me. Why come to me? Because you did it yourself. You built something real, and—" she hesitated. "Because I owe you an apology. The way I treated you at that dinner, the comments about your ring and your job, I was cruel. I'm sorry." "Thank you," I said, surprised by her sincerity. "Marcus is working for our father's company now, sales division. He's fine, financially, but he's bitter. He tells everyone you destroyed him out of spite." "Does he?" But I looked into what actually happened. I read the case study in that compliance book. I know the truth now. She met my eyes. "You didn't destroy him. He destroyed himself." "Yes," I said simply. "Can I ask you something? Did you love him? Ever?" I thought about it. I loved who I thought he was, or maybe who I wanted him to be. But the real Marcus? The one who needed me to be small so he could feel big? No, I never loved that man. Bethany nodded. "He never deserved you." "No," I agreed. "He didn't." We talked for another hour. I gave her advice on starting her business. Practical things, honest things. When we parted, she hugged me. "I hope I can be half as strong as you," she said. "You can," I told her. "Just don't make yourself small for anyone, not even family." 5 years after leaving Marcus, Meridian Language Solutions had offices in 4 cities and employed 43 people. I'd published a book, Speaking in Tongues, Building a Business Across Languages, and it had become required reading in several MBA programs. I dated, cautiously at first, then with more confidence. I'd learned to spot the red flags, men who found my accent cute, men who wanted to help me with my business, men who saw my success as a challenge rather than a celebration. And then I'd met David, a copyright lawyer who spoke 3 languages himself, and whose first question about my accent had been, "Which language do you think in?" "Romanian," I'd answered, surprised by the question. "That must be amazing," he'd said, "to have your inner voice in one language and your outer voice in another, like being 2 people at once." "Yes," I'd said, feeling seen in a way I never had with Marcus. Exactly like that. We'd been together for a year now, and he'd never once asked me to change my accent, my ambitions, or myself. On a cold Tuesday in November, 7 years after the audit, I was at a gala for immigrant entrepreneurs, an event I now helped organize, when I saw Marcus across the room. He looked older, softer around the middle, less certain. He saw me at the same moment and froze. For a long moment, we just looked at each other across the crowded ballroom. Then he walked over. "Elena," he said. "Marcus, you look successful." "I am successful. I always was. You just never noticed." He winced. I know that now." He paused. "I read your book." "Did you?" "Yeah. The part about making yourself small for someone else's comfort. That was about me, wasn't it?" "Partially," I admitted, "but mostly it was about me, about learning to take up space again." "I'm sorry," he said, "for all of it. The mockery, the assumptions, the way I treated you. I didn't understand then, but I do now. What changed?" "I started dating someone, another immigrant actually. She's a doctor from India, incredibly accomplished, and I caught myself doing it. The same things I did with you. Talking over her, correcting her pronunciation, treating her success like it was adorable rather than impressive." He looked down. "She called me out on it. Told me she wouldn't shrink herself for me. And I realized. That's exactly what I'd asked you to do." "And what did you do?" "I went to therapy, worked on myself, tried to understand why I needed to feel superior to feel secure." He met my eyes. "We're not together anymore. She deserved better than the work in progress I was. But I learned from it. Good, I said simply. Are you happy, Elena? I thought about my business, my book, my team of talented people I got to work with every day. I thought about David, who loved my ambition as much as he loved me. I thought about the young woman I'd spoken to at the conference, who'd emailed me last month to say she'd gotten her dream job and hadn't hidden her accent once. Yes, I said. I'm very happy. I'm glad. He seemed to mean it. For what it's worth, you were right. About everything. I did need to face consequences. I did need to learn. And you deserve so much better than I gave you. Yes, I agreed. I did. He nodded and walked away, back to whatever life he'd built after I'd stopped making myself small to fit inside it. David appeared at my elbow, handing me a glass of wine. Was that him? He asked. Yes. How do you feel? I thought about it, searching for anger or satisfaction or regret, but all I felt was a calm sense of closure. I feel free, I said, and I was. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.